In the history of aerial warfare, there's a rule that every pilot knows. You never, ever fight outnumbered. If it's 2 against 1, you run. If it's 10 against 1, you're already dead. But on October 24, 1944, a 34-year-old American pilot named David McCampbell looked down at the Philippine Sea and saw something that should have terrified him. Below him was a formation of 60 Japanese fighters. 60! A literal wall of enemy steel. And McCampbell was alone. Well, he had one wingman, but his radio was broken and he had almost no gas. By all logic, McCampbell should have turned his heavy, clunky Hellcat around and dove for the safety of his carrier. The Japanese pilots below certainly expected him to. To them, the American plane was a joke, a flying bathtub. It couldn't turn, it couldn't dance, and compared to the elegant agility of a Zero, it flew like a brick. But McCampbell didn't run. He didn't panic. Instead, he tightened his grip on the stick and initiated a maneuver so simple, so primitive, that sophisticated pilots called it caveman flying. He tipped the nose forward. He didn't dogfight. He didn't dance. He simply turned his plane into a falling anvil. What happened over the next 90 minutes wasn't a battle. It was a slaughter. By the time McCampbell landed, the caveman had done the impossible. He hadn't just survived, he had single-handedly shredded the enemy formation, setting a record that has never been broken to this day. 9 kills, 1 flight, 1 man. Here is the story of the deadliest 90 minutes in aviation history. To understand why this battle was so insane, you have to understand the 2 machines involved. It wasn't just a clash of metal, it was a clash of philosophies. On one side, you had the Japanese Zero. This machine was art. It was built like a samurai sword, light, sharp, and deadly agile. A Zero pilot could turn on a dime. They were trained in the ethos of the dogfight, an aerial ballet where the better pilot, the one with the most spirit, would win. To a Japanese ace, flying was poetry. On the other, you had the Grumman F-6F Hellcat. The Hellcat wasn't poetry. It was a factory. It was big, it was heavy, and it was ugly. The pilots called it the aluminum tank. It was designed with one specific philosophy: make it strong enough that a rookie can slam it onto a carrier deck without breaking it. If a Zero was a katana, the Hellcat was a sledgehammer. In a turning fight, the kind of fight pilots love, the Zero would win every time. If you tried to turn with a Zero, you died. It was that simple. So the Japanese pilots mocked the Americans. They viewed them as unskilled laborers in flying tractors, incapable of the high art of aerial combat. But David McCampbell wasn't interested in art. He was interested in physics. McCampbell wasn't your typical fighter jock. He was 34 years old, ancient for a fighter pilot. Most guys in the squadron were 19 or 20. They called him the old man. He didn't have the twitchy reflexes of a 20-year-old. He couldn't outturn a Zero, and he knew it. So he didn't. While the younger pilots were trying to learn fancy aerobatics, McCampbell was obsessed with a different tactic, a tactic that stripped away all the skill, all the turning, and all the art. It was the boom and zoom, or as the critics called it, the caveman approach. It worked like this. You use the massive engine of the Hellcat to climb high, higher than the enemy. Then you simply fall. You dive on them, fire your guns for 2 seconds, and use that massive speed to zoom back up into the sky before they can even turn their heads. Dive, kill, climb, repeat. It was boring, it was repetitive, it lacked honor. And on October 24, 1944, it was about to destroy an entire air force. The date is October 24, 1944, the Battle of Leyte Gulf. This is the largest naval battle in human history. The Japanese Imperial Navy is throwing everything they have left at the American invasion force in the Philippines. Commander McCampbell is sitting on the deck of the USS Essex, waiting. He's the commander of Air Group 15, the fabled 15. Suddenly, the klaxon screams. Radar has picked up a massive bogey. A formation of Japanese aircraft is heading straight for the fleet. McCampbell scrambles. He pushes the throttle of Mincy 3 forward and roars off the deck. He has only a handful of fighters with him, but as they climb through the clouds, disaster strikes. Fuel issues, mechanical failures. One by one, the other American fighters are forced to turn back. Within minutes, McCampbell is left with just one wingman, Ensign Roy Rushing. McCampbell and Rushing climb to 25,000 feet. They look down, and their hearts stop. Below them was not a patrol, it was an invasion force. 3 massive waves of Japanese aircraft, fighters, bombers, dive bombers. McCampbell counts at least 60, some reports say closer to 80. They are heading straight for the USS Essex. If those bombers get through, thousands of American sailors, McCampbell's friends, will die. McCampbell keys his mic to Rushing. "We can't turn back. We have to delay them." Delay them? 2 planes against 60? It's suicide. But McCampbell noticed something. The Japanese formation was disciplined. They were flying in a tight defensive box. They were confident. They saw the 2 lone Hellcats above them, and they didn't even break formation. Why would they? What can 2 planes do against 60? The Japanese leader probably laughed. He signaled his fighters to ignore the Americans and keep heading for the ships. That was their first mistake. McCampbell didn't dive right away. He waited. He circled like a shark, watching the formation. He was looking for the stragglers, the planes on the edge of the herd. He saw a 0 drifting slightly wide on the right flank. McCampbell tipped the nose. The heavy Hellcat dropped like a stone. The speedometer climbed, 300 knots, 350, 400 knots. The plane began to shake. This is the caveman trick. It's not about turning, it's about energy. By the time McCampbell reached the Japanese formation, he was moving so fast he was essentially a blur. He lined up the straggler. He squeezed the trigger for less than 1 second. The 650 caliber machine guns on the Hellcat shredded the delicate 0 instantly. It exploded into a fireball. But here is the key. McCampbell didn't stay to watch. He didn't turn to engage the other fighters. He immediately pulled back on the stick. The heavy Hellcat, carrying all that momentum, rocketed back up into the safety of the high altitude. By the time the other Japanese pilots turned to see who had shot their friend, McCampbell was already 5,000 feet above them, looking down, ready to do it again. It was the ultimate frustration. The Japanese were better dogfighters. They could outturn him easily, but they couldn't catch him. He was fighting in the vertical. They were fighting in the horizontal. McCampbell keyed his mic to Rushing. "Stay high. Pick a target. Dive. Shoot. Climb. Do not turn." For the next 10 minutes, they repeated the cycle. Dive, boom, climb. Another 0 went down, then a bomber, then another fighter. The Japanese formation began to panic. They couldn't see where the attacks were coming from. The sky above them was just the sun and the clouds, and out of nowhere, death would drop on them at 400 miles per hour. The Japanese commander made a fatal error. Instead of breaking formation to swarm the 2 Americans, he kept the formation tight for protection. He thought they could weather the storm. But McCampbell wasn't just shooting randomly, he was surgical. He realized that if he kept his speed up, he could dictate the entire battle. He started herding them. Yes, herding them, like a sheepdog. By diving on the left side, he forced the Japanese to turn right. By diving on the right, he forced them left. He and Rushing were literally steering a formation of 60 enemy planes away from the American fleet just by terrifying them. But there was a problem: ammo. The Hellcat carries a lot of bullets, but not infinite. McCampbell had been fighting for nearly an hour now. His fuel gauge was dropping into the red. His guns were starting to jam from the heat. He checked his ammo count. He had enough for maybe 2 more passes. He looked down. There were still dozens of enemies left. He could have gone home right then. He had already shot down 5 planes. He was an ace in a day. That's a career-defining achievement. But McCampbell saw something else. The Japanese formation, battered and terrified, was breaking. They had abandoned the attack run on the fleet. They were turning back to their base. McCampbell didn't go home. He went for the jugular. "I'm not done yet," he muttered. He climbed one last time. His engine was overheating. His body was exhausted. Pulling 5 or 6 Gs repeatedly for an hour is like being in a car crash over and over again. He spotted 2 Zeros trying to cover the retreat. He initiated the dive. The caveman dropped the hammer one last time. He fell upon the first Zero, Bert. A short burst. The Zero's wing sheared off. He didn't climb this time. He used the remaining speed to slide right behind the second Zero, Bert. The fuel tank ignited. 7 kills. He looked around. Another target, a fighter trying to climb up to meet him. McCampbell accepted the challenge. He fired a head-on burst. The enemy plane disintegrated. 8 kills. He was running on fumes. His guns made a hollow clunk sound. He checked the belts. He had exactly 2 rounds left. Most men would land. McCampbell saw one last target. He lined it up. He squeezed the trigger. The last few bullets left the chamber. The enemy plane smoked and spiraled down. 9. Only then did David McCampbell turn for home. When McCampbell approached the USS Essex, the deck crew was terrified. They had heard the radio chatter, but they didn't believe it. McCampbell's plane, Mincy 3rd, touched down. As the engine sputtered and died, completely out of fuel, the ground crew ran to the aircraft. They checked the gun bays. They were empty. They checked the fuel tank. It was dry. Then they checked the gun camera footage. The intelligence officers watched the film in silence. They counted. 1, 2, 3, 7, 9. 9 confirmed kills in a single sortie, and his wingman, Roy Rushing, he had shot down 6. Together, 2 flying bathtubs had destroyed 15 enemy aircraft in 90 minutes. They hadn't just defeated the enemy squadron, they had psychologically broken them. The Japanese attack force never reached the American fleet. The ships were safe. David McCampbell was awarded the Medal of Honor. He would finish the war as the Navy's top ace with 34 aerial victories. But his legacy wasn't just the medals, it was the lesson he taught the world that day over the Philippine Sea. The critics mocked the Hellcat. They mocked the caveman tactics. They said it lacked finesse. They said it wasn't real flying. But David McCampbell proved that in war, style doesn't matter. Art doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is who is left in the sky when the engine stops. And on that day, the caveman was the only one flying.